what they just did in adopting these rules was to go back to rules that we had in the early 90s that limits the number of bills that any legislator can introduce. It's now been limited to 10 bills. And what that does, it makes it more difficult to get measures like a change in statute so that we can have medical marijuana, and other progressive things, because other members of the legislature, everybody has an agenda generally that contains a number of different issues, and it's like if you only got 10 shots, people are reluctant to use them with something that they think is going to be a very uphill battle. But I've still reserved one of my slots to try to put this one forward, because I think it's an issue that needs to be addressed. You got people in this state who have chronic pain conditions, and there is a substance out there that can help alleviate that suffering, and they ought to have access to it.
I don't know how familiar you are with the VA's new directive, but this directive is actually based on the dialogue between Michael Crowlitz, who serves on the Veterans Medical Cannabis Board nationally, and I'm an advisor to his group. But his correspondence between the Undersecretary for Health and the VA resulted, when we showed them the clinical evidence, they said, so they recognize glaucoma, chemotherapy-induced nausea, multiple sclerosis, epilepsy, and chronic pain. If I'm a veteran and I'm in one of these 15 states, the VA doesn't necessarily give me my pain medication. In my particular case, when I'm using cannabis, I'm subject to arrest.
And that's one of the reasons why the law in North Carolina ought to change. So at a minimum, the veterans in our state, and we have a very heavy veteran concentration in North Carolina, ought to be able to receive through the VA whatever they need to help alleviate, those conditions. And, that's, if nothing else, even if it was, we could get a bill through that just did that, that's an advance. That's a step forward.
Absolutely. I've actually gone to the governor. They asked me after the last SEC, they said, what would you propose? And so I'm working with Courtney Crowd in the governor's office. I submitted the proposal with 4 things. Number 1, let's immediately try to find some way to stop arresting the veterans. If you don't have the authority as governor, then ask the Attorney General to make it the lowest priority. That's been done in several states, to stop arresting the veterans until we get the law changed. We know it's going to change. The second thing was that we look at people in prison simply for medical use of cannabis and start working on a way, it would be complicated, to get them out of the prison. The third thing was to appoint a task force to make North Carolina a model for treatment of war injuries. We're home with Delta Force, Special Forces, Special Ops. We got all the injured warriors in this state. And this state is not protected because of this.
Well, that's one of the reasons why it's important to try to move. We pride ourselves on being a progressive state in a whole list of things. Well, as you just pointed out, we need to become progressive in medical treatment.
Absolutely.
There's a tremendous amount of evidence now about the number of people who are coming back from these war theaters with traumatic brain injuries,
Absolutely.
with people who've been injured through the IEDs and lost limbs, and suffering from phantom pain, and all of that.
Absolutely.
And again, anything that helps alleviate these conditions, seems to me it's something that ought to be legal and ought to be accessible. Because, if you've got a person who has given one of their limbs in service to this country, come on, arresting somebody for taking a medication that could help them feel better and continue to be a productive citizen, that doesn't make any sense at all.
Well, this last SEC, I stood up and took one of the microphones. And then I just decided, I turned around, I walked up front and I faced them like I was at the podium. And I said, look, I told you at the Charlotte SEC that this medication helped me. You have, based on the medical evidence and the safety, no right to deny me that medicine. This last time in July, when the unanimous vote occurred, ask Sarah, some of the people in this room, look at the video. The mood of the room, was unmistakable. We almost lifted the roof. We said, let's remove all the obstacles to passing this bill. And what I've seen today is a sea change.
Well, it's clear from the minutes that were adopted that what you just said happened. There was a tremendous amount of support. And, you know, we did get, in the last session of the legislature, a bill introduced. It didn't get the necessary traction to get out of committee. We'll see how it happens this time. What we really need in order for it to pass is a very strong bipartisan coalition.
We're working on that. We have committed Republicans already. I've got an unaffiliated in Reedsville I'm talking to. I've got 2 Republicans that are very close. They're looking. One of them's a veteran. So I am in hopes that I can come to you and give you at least 12 names.
You know, it would be great if we could get the Military Affairs Committee in the House behind this measure.
Do you know the governor's just appointed as a Matt Courtney Crowder told me last week that the governor's now appointed a military advisor to look at veterans issues. The governor, I have approached her twice, dressed just like this, and I told her, I said, this is a critical issue, Governor Perdue. Lieutenant Governor, I was seated beside his wife. I showed him the platform. I said, look, this is the resolution we passed. And the Lieutenant Governor's wife said, what? She got her glasses out. She said, I didn't know we had a resolution like this. And she's a Democrat. How do we expect that?
Well, the problem is that the resolution has not been widely circulated. It's a communication problem. And as you and I have talked on other issues, it's not just this issue.
I know.
And you know, so what we have to first cure within the party is how we communicate information broadly and quickly. It doesn't do any good for the information to get there 3 days after the critical vote.
That's right. That's right. You're right. One thing that I hope the naysayers, and you know, I talked to Winky Wilkins today. I got a different reception. I sat in his office and let him tell me his son got messed up on it, messed his whole family up. I got a different response to that. He actually smiled at me and said, some of us take a little longer to learn. If Winky changes, we got it made. What North Carolina is sitting on right now is a golden opportunity. Just like in 1910 when Ford rolled his first cars out, Ford and Chevrolet became the big corporations. Right now, North Carolina is poised to become a real leader in this field. We got the veterans, we got the support of the Democratic Party, we got support of 80% of the people. It's time for the legislature to wake up and make North Carolina a leader.
Well, there is no question in my mind that if the issue of medical cannabis was put to a vote of the people, that the people would vote it in.
Absolutely. I find support everywhere. When I finally say the word marijuana, I'm surprised at what people say. And what I'm starting to get now is like my neighbor who first, well, don't tell anybody. She stopped me the next week in my neighborhood. Her brother died. He had cancer. And she said, Perry, you know what? It's the truth, and it ought to be told. If more people take that attitude, our job will get a lot easier. Thank you very much for your time.
It's a pleasure.
Look forward to it.
All right. See you in the legislature.
Okay.